I'm Melissa Shanahan, and this is the Velocity Work Podcast, episode number 42. This podcast is for attorneys who are running their own firms. We explore tactics, tools, and stories related to pushing past simply lawyering well and into building a successful firm. Working in your firm and working on your business are two very different things. This podcast focuses on the latter. Well, hello, my friends. Welcome to this week's episode. I am coming to you off the heels of the Memorial Day weekend. I hope you guys had a wonderful Memorial Day weekend. We certainly did. We have just invested in some outdoor work here at our home. Since we moved in, we really haven't touched the outdoors, and we just decided to go for it over the last month. So we have a new front yard. It's cleaned up. It's got a bunch of trim that's really cool. And in the back, we redid the patio, which has been, I've been out there every single day since it's been done. And man, what a difference it makes to have a really nice outdoor space to be able to sit. So we have an umbrella now out there so I can sit and do work if I want to outdoors. It's just been a game changer. So we spent the weekend doing that. I hope you got to get outside and get a little bit of vitamin D, a little bit of sunshine. Well, today I have something a little bit different for you in terms of the content for the podcast. As many of you probably know, I hosted a class last week called How to Trade Being Busy for Actual Results. That was on Wednesday of last week. It went really well. I think there are plenty of people that have been responded with questions in actual class. But then since then, I've had emails from people reaching out saying like, oh my gosh, this is really useful. Thank you for sharing. It's clear that you understand human nature and all, like just good conversation with the participants. And I figured that today I would give you a clip inside of the webinar of something that I haven't explained on the podcast, but I think about it all the time in my own world, in my own head, for my own life. And I also talk to clients about it. And it's something that it's just one of those principles that when you really understand it, is a concept that when you understand it, it allows you to, you can't ever unknow what you hear. And so it's like forever you have this new lens. And maybe it doesn't mean that you're perfect at how you want to move forward once you learn this concept, but it's progress to have a new lens. And so I thought I would share the piece of the webinar today that describes the Motivational Triad. Many of you have probably heard of it, but there's sort of a modern way of looking at it, and you'll hear me go into all of that. So that is what I'm going to give you today for content. I probably will do more podcasts around this topic in the future, but this was the nuts and the bolts of the Motivational Triad and why it's so important to think about when you are focused on making progress in terms of as a business owner and for your firm. But making progress really depends on the control that you have over what your brain is doing, right? And so again, it's not about perfection, it's about progress, but I hope that you get some good takeaways from the material today, and it just causes you to think, cock your head to the side and think, okay. You just start to think a little bit differently about how you operate, and you start to notice things differently about how you operate. Before I split into that recording, I want to just say one more thing. I cannot tell you how important it is to wrap your head around that there are plenty of things that you can do for your business, that you can do to make progress. But if you are not operating from a place of integrity with yourself, right? That relationship with yourself is really strong. There's a lot of trust there that you will follow through on the things that you say you will do. It makes all the things that you have plans to do very cheap, because who knows, right? If they'll ever get done, or maybe you believe they'll get done, but you're not sure someday when I can get to it. Oh, I'll do that. I'm going to do it next week, but then it really doesn't happen next week, right? And so I just want you to really pay attention to the content today and anything else you hear from me that talks about how you show up and how you operate, this is why. Because you can't make real progress unless you pay attention to this part of yourself. And I'm all about digging into the numbers and getting into the action for business. If I wasn't, I wouldn't have a business, right? But this is something that can't be ignored. And the longer you ignore it, the more you will kind of spin in that cycle of like meaning to do these great things, and they don't always get finished, and maybe they don't even get started, right? So listen up to today's clip, or the clip from the class last week, and I hope you enjoy. So if we start with how the brain works, this is really a basic. I wanted to do this section because it's important to give you a basic understanding of how your brain works, because if you can understand that, then you can start to hack things. And I'm not a big fan of the word hack and life hack and whatever, but you really can start to get underneath things in a different way. You see things in a different way once you understand that your brain is wired to be and do things a very certain way. I'm going to show you some diagrams and talk through that. And we're going to talk about this urge to quit something. And so I thought it would be helpful to define that. Like, what is quitting? We hear all this stuff out there about quitting. And what's interesting is most people ask, like, what is failure? What's the definition of failure? And to me, failure only happens when you quit. It's not, I know that a lot of people, it's popular to believe, which is great, fail forward, fail often, fail fast, right? Meaning that's not really failure. It's just learning along the way. And I agree with that. I feel like that's probably an overplayed topic and we don't need to talk about that. Like, failure is not a bad thing. But truthfully, if you were actually going to define the word failure, to me, it's when you quit, period. So the definition of quitting is to stop before reaching your desired result. And so when you quit, you fail ahead of time. And here's what I mean by that. When we go after something, if we set a goal and we go after it, if you don't stop until you reach the desired result, maybe it takes you longer. Maybe how you thought you get there, how you thought you were going to get there wasn't like that at all. It didn't work. And so then you have to go back and figure out, okay, I need a different route. I need a different method, something to try. And you keep trying and you keep working and you keep learning along the way until you reach your desired result. If you don't reach your desired result, it's because you quit. Now, if you quit, it means you just failed ahead of time. You didn't even give yourself the opportunity to really fail, right? So I think I love this idea of failing ahead of time. And it's been a really important concept for me when I think about me and building velocity work and working with clients. But the only way that you will fail is if you quit. And that means you did fail and you failed ahead of time because, I think you guys get the point. But this feels important for everyone to understand before we get into the diagrams, because we're going to be talking about quitting, the concept of quitting, and we need to be on the same page about what that exactly means. The other thing, actually, I should say this too. The other thing about quitting, I put here, there's a reason. The reason that you quit always stems from your brain, and it usually shows up as an excuse or a justification. And there's some common ones that I'm putting here. Like, common ones are, I don't know how, it's too confusing, I don't have the patience for this, I don't have time for it. Or you quit and then you're looking back at it, you're like, I didn't have time for it, it's not going to happen right now. Whatever, there's really common things that just come out of people's mouths without really thinking about why they fell short, right? Why they failed, why they quit. And the one thing I'll say about this is every one of those excuses and justifications is a lie. It's a lie. So we lie a lot. We're pretty good at that around why we are not seeing something through. So sometimes it's very deliberate and we just decide to quit. We decide to fail ahead of time, right? We just decide to throw our hands up because we think the thought, which isn't true. You could overcome this pretty darn easily. I don't know how. It's too confusing. I don't have patience. I don't have time, blah, 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 blah. So that's one type of quitting. The other type of quitting which I'm not outlining here on a slide, but it's worth mentioning because this is the one I know more than any. This is the one I deal with more, and I have to like overcome harder, is the sneaky kind of quitting where you don't deliberately say, I don't have time, so I'm just going to stop. Like, I don't do that. But what I do, what I have been known to do, is I will be working hard towards something, and then it's like other things come into focus and I sort of let it go. I let the original thing I was working towards, I kind of let that go and I focus on something different. And that's sneakier because it's not like you deliberately like, yeah, I'm going to quit this. It's more like it just got lost and something else came into focus. And then what happens next? That thing gets lost and something else comes into focus. And so that is a sneakier version of quitting, but it's still quitting. You're still in control of you, right? And so just by allowing it to slip away and allowing your focus to turn somewhere else, you're quitting the thing you started. And so I really want you to think about what have you we get really good at what we practice. And so what have you been practicing? Because we all have this on some level. We all have a relationship with quitting and a relationship with failure. And so I want you to think about what your relationship is to quitting and what your relationship is to failure. And, what does yours look like? Everybody's different. Is yours more the like, no, I make a call and I quit? And I have a really good reason or really good justification for it? Or is it that like, I just don't stay focused on it? Like before I know it, I'm like, oh yeah, I was doing that thing, but I'm not now. Like, I don't know what happened to it. So just be very aware of what your version is, what that looks like for you. I got a little notification that someone raised their hand, which is awesome. I totally want interaction, but there's a Q&A button. So if you have questions, put your questions in the Q&A, and then in that section, I'll open up the Q&A and we'll like go through the questions. All right. So that's the whole quitting thing. And that's important to know before we get into the next stuff, which is the motivational triad. And many of you, if not all of you, have probably seen this before, but I'll give you a quick rundown. Essentially, the motivational triad is a description or a depiction of what we have had to do to survive as a species. So going way back, when you think about survival, we were motivated to do certain things to survive. So one of them is to seek pleasure. One of them is to avoid pain, and the other is to conserve energy. And I thought this would be useful to go over because once you understand this, you can start to spot it for yourself where you're doing this. But sticking with going back just to understand the roots of this. In terms of seeking pleasure, the reason that we were motivated to seek pleasure, because think of the things that, would have brought you pleasure back then. Basically, human connection, which will bring you pleasure. Also, having sex, that's pleasurable and it procreates, which is survival, right? Eating food, that was survival. Like there's pleasure and your brain reacts to pleasure in a very specific way with dopamine and serotonin and things like that. So the brain is wired to seek pleasure. We're also wired to avoid pain and just keep ourselves away from anything that could hurt us. A long time ago, that looked a lot different than what it looks like in today's modern world. And so we're going to talk about more of a modern day motivational triad. But just to finish rounding this out, pain is built into the human experience as a survival tactic. It's a signal, and it used to serve us really well, but as we'll talk about, it doesn't serve us in the same ways. And then conserving energy, just expending the least amount of energy as possible. And so really, when you think about this motivational triad, going back in the day, life was really simple in terms of, not easy, but simple in terms of what we needed to do to survive. And so we have gotten where we've gotten because we have survived and we've evolved with this model. But the problem is, as great as that model is, the crazy messed up thing about it now is that we live in an environment where there is overload of pleasure to be had. And it's so easy to avoid discomfort, and it's so easy to conserve energy that it's a problem to stay in this motivational triad. But this is the way we're wired. And so you have to understand it so you can start to override it. So default brain nowadays, right? Like modern day motivational triad, I changed up the words so that you could adapt this concept to today. So instead of avoid pain, it is pain, but even I want you to think about discomfort, like emotional discomfort. We avoid that. But that's our version today of pain. There also is the version of like dark alley. Like this works. If you're in a dark alley, you need to run and whatever. Like the motivational triad works with really extreme situations, but we are not living in extreme situations day to day. We are just trying to operate the best we can and grow a damn business, right? So it's a little different. So avoiding discomfort, abandoning effort, and indulging. That is sort of the modern day glance or the way that the motivational triad, we can speak to it today. Now, here's the thing. When we bump up against something, like something's uncomfortable, even as simple as like, I don't feel like doing that thing. I said I was going to do that thing. I don't feel like doing that thing. Like it's uncomfortable. There's some resistance there. And we're going to talk about resistance in a little bit. What happens is you experience an urge to go do something else, usually seek pleasure, like go have a snack. Like you don't feel like doing the thing you want to do. And so you turn your focus to have something else that feels or sounds better, right? Like more pleasure. So you feel this urge. Now, if you answer the urge, that means you just abandon your effort and you go indulge, right? So you abandon the effort, you go indulge. And this whole cycle just keeps staying. Like if this is how you operate in any area of your life, you could probably see it. And I want you to really think of an area of your life. Maybe it's work and what you're focused on. Maybe it's something with your family, whatever. Just try to think of something in your life where you can relate to this so that you get the most out of it. So this sucks, right? Like this does not give us results because we never really make headway on anything, because when we experience discomfort, we just go do something else. Sometimes we exercise enough willpower where we just stick with it. But like for the, like this is a pattern that most humans have, most humans. So I think what's really cool is those of you that are on this call right now I don't think you're most humans, right? You're on this call, but we all still deal with this at some point. But I just like kudos to you. If you're on this call, you're in the like 1% of the population that actually even cares to think about this stuff. So basically an urge happens. An urge is always going to happen. Always, 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 always. I don't care if you're Bill Gates. I don't care if you are Venus or Serena Williams. Every time that there is discomfort, there's always going to be an urge to like exit stage left or go do something different. And if you answer that urge, then that means that you've just abandoned effort and you're indulging, and that cycle keeps happening. So now we're going to talk about constraint, because constraint is extremely important if you want to start to override this typical pattern that happens a lot, or just like default. It is the way we were wired, is to operate in this way. And so constraint is a very important concept for you to understand and adopt. And just like, I need your buy-in on constraint if you want any of the rest of this stuff to work. So constraint is where you decide on one main project. Like I know you guys have a lot to do at work day to day, but we are on this call because you guys own businesses and you want to make headway on your business. So we're talking about on the business stuff. You probably have a lot of in the business stuff that you need to do, but I want you to remember that the on the business is very important. And it's so easy to feel like there's so many things we could be doing or should be doing that we get paralyzed, or we don't make move. We procrastinate. We don't know where to start, blah, 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 blah. So constraining down to one thing you're going to pick to focus on and go is very important. It allows you to focus. If you can understand constraint, and I've done podcasts on this, episode 40, somebody just put in the chat, they liked that, which was great. Episode 40 was about constraint. I also talk about it in, I think, episode number 4, which is about productivity. So constraint is extremely important. So once you understand constraint and you're like, all right, I see this, I see you, I get this. The other thing to note is that when you decide on constraint, you have to commit to it, and you have to commit to not switching to something else. You are going to see this thing through until it's done, until it's completed. And then you can pick the next thing. And then you can pick the next thing. But the problem is we're kind of all over the place. And so with our projects and the things we want to get done. And so it's not going to, it's very inefficient to work that way and to be focused across many things. But it also usually we don't make headway on any of them. And even if you do, it's just watered down. So constraint is extremely important. Now, if we are to look at the motivational triad with like thinking about constraint, like we're picking one thing and we're going to see it through to completion. Then when you experience discomfort, you're going to have an urge to go do something else because you're not a robot, you're a human. So you're going to have an urge to go do something else. And then your job is to not answer the urge. Your job is to allow the urge to be there and move forward anyway with your one thing that you said you were going to do. This is the part where if you can get this, and I don't mean get it intellectually, I mean get it like actually practice this once or twice, and it's freaking hard. But that is the cost of like there's a quote, discomfort is the currency for your dreams. And I love that quote because I think it's really true. But I also, another way to think about it is like not answering your urges. That's the payment for getting things done. That is the payment for making headway on things. And so when you experience this resistance that like, you don't want to do it, you like all this stuff comes up and you would rather go have a snack, or like me, like where you just kind of let it fall out of focus and you're like, oh, let me go focus on this thing that feels productive over here. Like this is the right thing to focus on. Now, I don't really have enough information for this thing over here. I said I was going to do it, but I'm just going to go over here and do this thing. And you do that back and forth and thing to thing to thing to thing. And that the problem with that is that you keep answering the urge to switch your focus. It's abandoning your effort and it's indulging in the switch, in the focus. And then that happens all over again. So here, when the urge, you don't answer it. You allow the urge. It's going to feel like crap. You're going to have to like really let the urge, you're probably going to feel mad sometimes that like you're going to do the thing anyway, even though you don't feel like doing it. Sometimes, whatever. It's like emotions will come up if you don't answer the urge, and your job is just to sit with that, let it ride through. It'll probably take a minute or two and then get to work. And the people don't take the time to do this. It is a meta skill, by the way. If you can learn to do this, to experience the urge and don't answer it and do your thing anyway, that is the key to anything you want. That is the key to anything you want. So you can see now why the definition of quitting fits here, because an urge is essentially a call to quit. And if you answer that call, you just keep quitting and you fail ahead of time at nearly everything you do. But if that call to quit is not answered, then and you expend the effort to do the thing you said you were going to do, and you delay gratification, right? Like you don't go switch, like you're delaying gratification, then this is the motivational triad that sort of flipped on its head that will work in modern day society to get where you want to go. It's almost like the first motivational triad was great to help us evolve to where we are now, but like, thanks, we don't need that anymore. It's actually very unhelpful in the day-to-day scenario to like be motivated by those things. And so you have to flip it on its head, and you have to be committed to really having an awareness about what's going on for you here. So this is important to understand. So this is the whole, how your brain works. Like I really wanted to explain this to you so that you have this base understanding, and you will start to watch yourself now, and you will start to notice when you are giving into an urge, you're answering that call to quit. And at least you'll have an awareness, even if you still decide to quit, now, because of this understanding, you will you will have an awareness about how you're operating and you will see it much more differently. It's almost like you'll be like more objectively looking at what's happening. And that is a huge move in the right direction, because most of the time we're just trying to crush our tasks and get ahead with willpower. And that isn't how this works. That's not going to work for you. So that is this. I'm going to keep moving. I feel like I'm beating a dead horse. I hope you guys get this, but we can do Q&A on it. The next section is operational concepts. Well, I hope you enjoyed that clip from last week's class. It was a blast, and you will see that I will do more of these in the future moving forward. I think it's such a great way to interact. It's such a great way to get some important concepts across that will really help you, really, really help you if you listen and you implement, right? And so, yeah, thanks for listening. Thanks for tuning in. I will see you guys here next week. Hi guys, it's me again. Thank you so much for listening. If you like this podcast, you probably understand that growth requires results, not just staying active. If you want to learn how to build your days around getting results, I'll show you how in this zero fluff class that I teach. Go to velocitywork.com/results for registration information. I cannot wait to see you there. If you want to hang out with us on social, come on over to Instagram. Our handle is velocity.work. And on Facebook, it's facebook.com/meetvelocitywork. Cheers, my friends, to real growth and a great life. Show notes from this episode can be found at velocitywork.com/podcast.